Stephen, the Alabama Suicide Prevention and Resources Coalition says suicide has no boundaries. Doesn't matter your age, race, education, even your income level. So how can you know if your loved one is at risk? Joining me this morning is clinical psychologist Dr. Josh Claypo. Thanks so much for being here.
Sure, Gina, sure.
People are still shocked by his death. I mean, here's a man that was famous, had wealth, very talented. How did it happen to him?
Well, that's one of the most important points, is that having everything in the world, material or otherwise, doesn't make you immune to being depressed, doesn't make you immune to suicide. And in particular, no matter what we think about somebody else, we don't know what's going on inside of them. And that's why understanding suicide is so important, because it is unfortunately so prevalent.
Yeah, how prevalent is it?
Believe it or not, nearly 30,000 people in the U.S. each year take their own life, which is more than homicide. It's more common in men than women. And there's definitely not only signs and symptoms, but there's risk factors that put you at greater risk for committing suicide.
Okay, let's talk about some of these risk factors for suicide. What are they?
Well, obviously things like if you're suffering from depression, but also if you're suffering from substance abuse or a few other mental health problems, a family history of depression, but also a family history of suicide. So looking back in your family and seeing if other family members have committed suicide. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, those things put you at risk, as well as, and we're hearing more about this now, traumatic brain injury or repeated concussions. All of those put you at greater risk. Doesn't mean that you're going to commit suicide, but much like heart disease or diabetes or anything else, it puts you at greater risk for committing suicide.
Well, as a parent, you know, I always want to know what's going on. So what are some of the warning signs to look out for? There
are clear warning signs. Obviously, if somebody says, I'm thinking of taking my own life, that is the most obvious and you have to pay attention to it. But you may get more subtle things like, life would be better off if I wasn't here or if I wasn't in the picture. So more subtle words like that. People who start engaging in risky behaviors, running red lights when they don't normally do that. Getting your financial affairs in order. Somebody who's been depressed and then all of a sudden starts seeming more calm or resolved, all of those only suggest that suicide might be around the corner.
Okay, so if we see some of these signs and symptoms, what's the first thing we should do?
The number one thing is, if you think someone is suicidal, do not leave them alone. Don't second guess it. Do not leave them alone. You always can get them, or you can call a physician. You can always call 911. You can take someone to the emergency room. You can even call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. It's 1-800-273-TALK, not just for the person who's suffering, but for you yourself to understand how to better handle the situation. All of those things can be done.
All right, Dr. Josh Claypo, the information today could save a life.
Thanks, Gina.
All right, thank you. Back to you.
Ready?